If you are from the Philippines, you should be alert right now because something enormous is brewing just off your shores. This isn't just a diplomatic rift. It's not just military tension. This is about power, survival, and ownership of something that could rewrite the economic future of the Indo-Pacific. And who's right at the center of it? A $26.3 trillion oil jackpot hidden beneath Philippine waters. An increasingly aggressive China claiming nearly all of it. And now, the most powerful military in the world, the United States, is moving in, not just with words, but with warships, missile platforms, and billion-dollar oil giants. You heard that right? America isn't just backing the Philippines in press conferences anymore. They are backing it with drills, drones, destroyers, and dollars. But here's the real twist. Behind the headlines, beneath the ocean, and inside confidential boardrooms, a seismic realignment of power is underway. One that could decide who controls Asia's future and who gets burned trying. So the question is, what really happened? In this video, let's find out. On the surface, the West Philippine Sea is a vision of tropical beauty, with cerulean waters, coral reefs, and scattered islets glowing under the Southeast Asian sun. But under those waters lies something far more volatile than beauty. $26.3 trillion worth of oil and natural gas, and the most intense geopolitical standoff in Asia today. This isn't just another maritime zone. It's a strategic jackpot. The sea is laced with energy-rich deposits and sits at the heart of international trade routes that handle a third of the world's shipping. Beneath its depths lies a combination of untapped energy and untamed ambition, and the Philippines, by every international law, owns the rights to it. At least, that's what the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled in 2016. But in Beijing, international law is treated more like a suggestion than a boundary. Rather than recognizing the tribunal's verdict, which clearly invalidated China's 9-dash line and reaffirmed the Philippines' exclusive rights to its maritime territory, China fortified. It turned shallow reefs into sprawling military outposts. It militarized fishing fleets. It deployed Coast Guard ships not for rescue, but to ram, puncture, and board Philippine vessels. Acts that have escalated year by year, reaching a tipping point with water cannon assaults and even boarding actions in 2024. While the world fixated on Taiwan and Ukraine, Beijing built a shadow empire on the sea, 1 inch at a time. Their tactics? Creep, claim, cement. It's been described as salami slicing, and the Philippines was losing slice after slice. For years, Manila hesitated. Governments changed, but the tone remained cautious, always balancing diplomacy with dependency, always wary of confrontation. But every time Filipino ships tried to conduct surveys, China appeared. Every time a resupply mission was launched to the BRP Sierra Madre at 2nd Thomas Shoal, it was blocked or attacked. Then came the breaking point. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., a line was drawn. The old strategy of strategic patience gave way to strategic pushback. Diplomacy gave way to documentation. Incursions were exposed. Confrontations were filmed. The Philippines stopped whispering and started warning. But warnings weren't enough. If China's grip was built with warships and dredgers, Manila needed to respond with something stronger than press releases. And that response, the one thing China didn't expect, came not from Manila Bay, but from across the Pacific. Because while China was watching for confrontation, it didn't expect competition. It didn't expect America to move in, not with troops, but with drill bits, billion-dollar rigs, and red, white, and blue capital. And once U.S. corporations staked their claim in Philippine waters, this stopped being a local dispute. It became a global declaration. Now let's talk about what changed everything. Because China may have built islands, But the U.S. just built leverage with oil rigs. After years of watching from the sidelines, America stepped onto the stage not with missiles, but with contracts. 2025 wasn't just the year of confrontation. It was the year of commitment. Drilling rigs, legal permits, and U.S. corporate muscle flooded into the Philippines. And suddenly, the fight over fish and shoals transformed into a battle over billion-dollar energy fields. The old Malampaya project, once the pride of the Philippines' offshore energy production, had fallen stagnant. But now, Chevron is back, reactivating those gas fields with renewed capital. ExxonMobil followed, turning its attention to the deep waters off Palawan. New American players, smaller but hungry, began striking deals with Filipino firms. Joint ventures, revenue-sharing arrangements, full-scale production fast-tracked through congressional blessings. The signal was loud and unmistakable. The U.S. wasn't just funding exploration, it was defending an investment. And unlike Chinese firms, which often mask state control behind private names, American companies brought with them an unspoken clause. Mess with us, and you are not just poking a corporation, you are challenging the Pentagon. Under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, the Philippines now hosts 9 U.S. rotational bases. The ink on energy contracts had barely dried before Reaper drones, amphibious assault vehicles, and Tomahawk-ready missile launchers began rotating through strategic bases, from Luzon to Palawan. Exercises like Balikatan became more than symbolic. They mirrored war plans. The message was clear. Drilling here means defending here. This wasn't aid. This was alignment. President Marcos understood what was at stake. If China could choke out Philippine energy independence, it could hold the country hostage, economically, politically, and militarily. So instead of shrinking back, he doubled down. Laws were passed to jumpstart clean energy infrastructure. Policy reforms were introduced to attract U.S. and allied investments. The 60-40 revenue-sharing model, favoring the Philippines, was upheld and celebrated. For the first time in decades, Manila had not just a partner, but a shield. But this new setup came with a catch. Because when oil meets national defense, and when corporations mix with combat drills, it's no longer just economics. It's an escalation. At this point, oil wells become watchtowers. Every barrel extracted is a flag planted. And every Chinese disruption, every shadowing patrol or water cannon blast becomes an international incident. Which leads to a chilling question. Is this still business? Or are we on the edge of something far more dangerous? At first glance, it looks like commerce. Oil platforms bobbing on the horizon. Engineers are running seismic surveys. Corporations in suits are signing joint ventures with Filipino firms. But beneath the surface, a new reality is setting in. This isn't about barrels or balance sheets anymore. This is about sovereignty wrapped in steel. You see, America didn't inject billions into Philippine energy because it needed to refill gas stations in Los Angeles. It did it because energy is power, and whoever controls that power in the Indo-Pacific controls the future. Let's break it down. When Chevron and ExxonMobil start tapping reserves in the West Philippine Sea, they don't just bring fuel. They bring American legal systems, American contracts, and American expectations of protection. A threat to their operations is no longer just a local dispute. It's a geopolitical incident that could invoke the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty. That's no small detail. If a single Chinese patrol boat interferes with an American-affiliated rig, it doesn't just risk a maritime standoff, it risks triggering a U.S. military response. In Washington's eyes, these are now strategic energy assets, not just corporate ones. And in Beijing's eyes, they are an invasion by proxy. This is the point where pipelines become front lines. Every move by China, every innocent pass near a drilling platform, Every Coast Guard ship that shadows Filipino survey boats becomes a test of resolve, a test of red lines, a test of whether America's oil investments come with more than just capital. And the test is working because America's posture is shifting. Drones are flying longer missions. U.S. Navy vessels are lingering closer to the action. Joint exercises with Filipino forces now include live-fire components near disputed areas. A once theoretical alliance is becoming an operational muscle. But it gets deeper. This isn't just about defending a friend. It's about containing China's maritime rise. The U.S. is playing chess, and the Philippines is the square on the board where it can finally say, "This far, no further." Think about it. Washington didn't militarize the oil fields in Vietnam. It didn't do it in Thailand. But in the Philippines, where decades of underdevelopment created an economic vacuum, it saw a unique opportunity to use energy to earn Manila's trust, to use investment to win public favor, to use strategic access to pressure Beijing from below. It's the perfect trifecta: diplomacy, dollars, and deterrence. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, and current affairs impacting your lives. Here's the kicker: all that is working. China is nervous. State media have begun blasting the Philippines for welcoming foreign militarization. Patrols have doubled. Water cannon attacks have increased. Around Sabina Shoal and Second Thomas Shoal, the confrontations are now weekly, sometimes daily. Beijing understands that every oil rig built under U.S. protection chips away at its claim of dominance. The U.S.-Philippines Energy Partnership is no longer an economic initiative. It's a statement. It says, "We will not be pushed out of Asia." It says, "This sea is not yours to control." It says, "If you escalate, we escalate harder." So the question now is no longer if confrontation is coming. It's when. And when it does come, it won't just play out over gas fields or shipping lanes. It will spread into diplomacy, into clean energy deals, into defense logistics, into regional alliances. Because this story isn't ending at the water's edge. It's only just begun. This isn't a resource rush. It's a redefinition of warfare. In the old playbook, wars were fought with tanks and treaties. But in the new Indo-Pacific doctrine, wars are fought with oil rigs, LNG terminals, and submarine power cables. What looks like infrastructure is, in fact, armor. What looks like an investment is, in fact, fortification. And for the Philippines, this is its shield. President Ferdinand Marcos knows exactly what's at stake. For decades, the Philippines has stood at the mercy of imported energy, with 90% of its oil, coal, and gas shipped from foreign suppliers. That's not just expensive, it's dangerous. One global disruption, one supply cut off, and the entire archipelago stalls. But now there's a path to independence, one drilled straight into the West Philippine Sea. Under Marcos, the government has fast-tracked dormant projects, signed off on joint ventures with U.S. firms, and passed a sweeping law aimed at developing a full-scale natural gas industry. It's not just about reducing imports. It's about transforming the Philippine economy from a dependent energy consumer into a regional energy powerhouse. And that changes everything, because when a nation controls its own energy, it controls its own destiny. Suddenly, Manila has leverage, not just in trade talks, but in diplomacy. Suddenly, it can dictate terms to neighbors, not beg for concessions. Suddenly, its voice at ASEAN meetings grows louder. And guess who's backing that transformation? The United States. Washington sees Philippine energy independence as a strategic opportunity. Not only does it loosen China's grip on Southeast Asia, it helps create a new frontline partner, one that can anchor a coalition of resistance against Beijing's maritime overreach. That's why U.S. investment isn't stopping at oil. Now, private American firms are exploring the export of modular nuclear power plants, which are compact, high-efficiency reactors that could revolutionize the Philippine grid. Even talks of exporting Philippine nickel for U.S. electric vehicle production are accelerating. This isn't aid, it's alliance building, and it's not subtle. Energy, clean tech, defense logistics. It's all part of a broader doctrine. Embed with allies before China can. Help them grow, help them build, and most importantly, help them stand. But here's where the game turns brutal. Because China is watching all this unfold. And it hates what it sees. It sees American LNG terminals breaking its monopoly. It sees modular nuclear plants pulling the Philippines out of its orbit. It sees Filipino ports growing friendlier to U.S. destroyers than Chinese merchants. So it strikes back. Not with missiles, but with ramming tactics, with water cannons, with laser blinding of the Coast Guards, with the stealthy construction of new island bases. Sabina Shoal is just the latest flashpoint, a pristine reef that could, overnight, turn into another Chinese fortress, like Subi, Mischief, and Fiery Cross before it. But this time, there's a difference. The Philippines isn't alone. For every harassed boat, there's now a U.S. drone overhead. For every Chinese vessel spotted near a gas field, there's a U.S. amphibious system on standby. For every inch of intimidation, there's now an allied camera watching and a diplomatic response being crafted in Washington. Because once you arm a nation with energy, you arm it with options. And that, more than any warship, is what Beijing fears. But energy is just one front. The bigger war, the invisible one, is playing out in how nations define freedom, draw red lines, and build alliances. And the Philippines is no longer a pawn. It's becoming the pivot. But one question arises. Is the U.S. willing to bleed for the Philippines? The question is no longer if the tension will boil over. The question is when and who will blink first. Because as oil rigs rise, military drills escalate, and alliances harden, the South China Sea is no longer a dispute. It's a slow-motion showdown. And at its center, the Philippines. Not just a battleground of maps and maritime claims, but the very test case for the future of American deterrence in Asia. Here's the cold truth. The U.S. can invest, advise, and patrol all it wants. But the moment of reckoning comes when Beijing crosses a red line, and the world waits to see if Washington is ready to enforce it. That moment is near. Already, American officials are saying the quiet part out loud. At recent defense briefings, the U.S. Department of Defense made it clear the Mutual Defense Treaty applies to attacks on Philippine vessels anywhere in the South China Sea. But what defines an attack? Is a ramming incident enough? What about laser interference, boarding, harassment with water cannons? This legal gray zone is where China thrives. It moves just beneath the threshold of war, pushing limits inch by inch, never giving the U.S. an easy reason to respond. And so far, Washington has played cautiously. And that's starting to change. The deployment of MQ-9 Reaper drones to Basa Air Base, the presence of U.S. Marines at EDCA sites, and the participation in live fire drills during Balikatan 2024 are not symbolic. They are deliberate signals. Signals that the U.S. isn't just watching the West Philippine Sea. It's preparing to fight for it. But here's the kicker. The Philippines doesn't want to be anyone's puppet. President Marcos is walking a tightrope, strengthening U.S. ties without appearing like a pawn of the West. That's why Manila is still hesitant to accept full-blown American escorts in its resupply missions to outposts like the BRP Sierra Madre. But one day, a Filipino patrol boat might get rammed hard. A Filipino Marine might be seriously injured, or worse. A resupply mission might get blocked so thoroughly that it sparks international outrage, And when that day comes, will the United States fire back? Because this isn't about protecting oil rigs anymore. It's about credibility. If the U.S. flinches, Beijing wins. Not just in the West Philippine Sea, but across the Indo-Pacific. Vietnam will rethink its strategy. Malaysia will go quiet. Taiwan will feel the tremor. If America doesn't back up its promises with action, its alliances will rot from within. But if it responds too hard, one wrong missile, one miscalculation, and we are staring down the barrel of a regional war. Or worse, a global one. That's the paradox. Protecting peace now requires the credible threat of war. The Philippines has already made its choice. It's standing tall. It revived its oil projects. It signed a $500 billion energy development roadmap. It bet on American steel and dollars. But that's not just an economic gamble, it's a dare. It's a message to Beijing. You may have the islands, but we have the allies. What do you think? Is this really about protecting Philippine sovereignty or projecting American power? Do you feel America wants an independent Philippines against China? Or is it eyeing the Philippines' oil reserves? In the comment section below, share your thoughts on what if America replaces China in contesting for the Philippines' oil reserves. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring the latest news stories on geopolitics, economics, changing world order, and current affairs. Things you need to stay informed. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.